Hey, great. Welcome back to the Budget Cut Podcast. This is Sean Connors, CEO with U-Team Sponsor. Pleasure to be joined by Jim Martineau up at Clackamas Community College, as well as Marco Zurdia with the NWAC, the Executive Director with the NWAC. Again, we're putting together these podcasts 10 to 15 minutes at a time, trying to be a resource for coaches and directors that are out there right now in terms of how they're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and how that's affecting their campuses, and try to be a resource for you, try to give you some information as to how others are dealing with it and how that might help you in your quest to deal with this adversity the best that you possibly can. So, gentlemen, good morning. Appreciate you taking time out of your, I'm sure, crazy and undoubtedly busy days. And thanks in advance for coming on board. I guess first question, we'll jump right into it. Jim, what were your initial thoughts when all this came down and you guys responded to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It's kind of a two-part answer for me. As athletic director, we've been kind of talking about it on campus a little bit and knowing that things might be happening, but also still coaching the women's basketball team and trying to get our championships done. We were actually in Everett 3 weeks ago, and took the team up and trying to get that one started, and was in the middle of that up there with Marco and the rest of the group when Everett had to close down and we got relocated the first time for the women's basketball championship. So, in the middle of it from day one in both ends, as far as either an athletic director and also a coach.
Geez, wow, so you were up in Everett. You guys were on the road. That was championship time, right?
Yeah, we had. I don't remember the exact dates. Early March. We went up on Wednesday night and did a shoot around and we drew the 10 p.m. game, so we didn't have a lot going on Thursday early morning. Went to the gym, watched the first couple games, and was in the gym when Marco got the news from the Everett administration, and so sat in the group meeting there and was part of that decision-making process the first week.
Yeah, wow. Marco, I guess we'll ask you the same question. What initially came down? What was your first reaction when all of this information came down, especially being that you guys are so close to the epicenter of this whole thing up there in the state of Washington?
Yeah, Sean, when we first got word that the first case was found in Everett, I thought to myself, okay, of all the chances where we're having our basketball championship tournament for both men and women, it's in Everett. And then on Wednesday morning, I was actually in a meeting, and a gentleman who was a doctor with the emergency response team in Snohomish County talked about how, who the really target areas are of this virus. The elderly with respiratory problems and pregnant women and children are the big concerns. And hey, the 18 to 22-year-old athlete, that's not necessarily the target. Well, as Jim said, 2 games into it, I get called up to the president's office, and I said, you know what? Let me walk up there. It's a good hike from the gym. And the vice president said, no, you will drive up here. And so proceeded to meet with their administration and came to the conclusion that, they had somebody who they believed had the virus. And after probably 20, 25 minutes discussion, decided, best thing, the safety of their students, our student athletes, is to cancel the tournament. And I quickly got together with a team of people. Jim was one of those people. My chairman of the executive board had just sat down, and there were some other people there who I just really trust and value their opinion. They're strong character people. And so we began to get on the whiteboard and make a plan. And that's how we reacted to it 2 weeks ago.
Wow. Well, I'm sure the response from yourselves and the rest of the NWAC officials there, I'm sure it was great for athletic directors. I'm sure, like yourself, Jim, to get such a swift, quick response, let you guys know where you need to go. I'm sure direction was, albeit there's a lot of uncertainty going on. I'm sure it was comforting to know you've got some guys in those positions that are making some quick decisions.
Yeah, I mean, it's we didn't have a lot of choice as far as making a quick decision there. We had to figure out, number one, to let everybody know, and then number two, start thinking about, how do we try to get this in, and this was a week before, the rest of the sports world canceled everything.
Yeah.
So this was a week ahead of that whole thing, and so we were, trying to scramble and try to figure out what to do and how to still get a championship tournament in for both the men's and women's teams.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy. Well, I was going to segue a little bit to, Jim, as an athletic director, you're dealing with coaches and student athletes, every day. Kind of take us through what's it like. What are these coaches? What are conversations you're having with your coaches? What are the conversations that you're having with your student athletes? And how do you recommend, or how are they responding? And how do you recommend that they respond moving forward based upon where?
Yeah, I mean, it's never easy, and again, I play that two-part role where I'm, also a coach and coaching a group of fine young women, and so it's interesting to be in both sides there, and how to make sure I voice that message to them, and also to have conversations with the coaches, and everybody was aware of where we were at as we went up there. We'd had conversations about, hey, this is a possibility. It's, so it wasn't a complete blindside to the group. They're obviously disappointed, and the first week, it's okay. We'll go home and regroup and see what we can make of it, and we quickly got a plan together, and we're going to move, most of it here at Clackamas and part of it at Lynn Benton Community College and shoot for the next week. And so, but everybody knew as we went along that there was a possibility of not getting any of this in. It still doesn't make it easy to have those conversations, but the more you can have conversations up front, the easier the hard conversations are.
I bet. Is there anything right now, Jim, that you're kind of leaning on or falling back on in terms of any previous experiences that you've gone through? I mean, I know this is obviously unprecedented, but is there anything that you're drawing on from past experiences that's kind of helped you have these conversations with the coaches or leading your student athletes?
It's keeping it in perspective. I mean, I think, here on our campus, it's, we had two really good basketball teams. The men's basketball team was ranked number 1 going in, and our women's team was ranked number 4. And, so the men's team had a legit shot to win it, and we had a pretty good shot to get to the Final Four on the women's side. And so it's tough to swallow, but in the big scheme of things, it's still, it's a sport, it's a game. I think keeping that perspective is important. And ultimately the safety of our student athletes and community is the overlying factor.
Sure. Yeah, Marco, a similar question, just in terms of putting yourself in the shoes of the athletic director, kind of what's going through your head right now, and how are you, how would you respond, and what kind of leadership or direction have you given them in terms of the way that the NWAC would like to see things go moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting, Sean. I've just kind of held on to the principle from our office that we're just going to be as thoughtful as we can in making decisions. I think a lot of times when things get intense and hairy, people want decisions right away, and I understand and appreciate that. But I think what we've tried to hold on to was, let's be thoughtful in our decision. Whatever decision we're going to make is going to be wrong in somebody's eyes and right in somebody else's. Yeah. I think we're unique in that we are a multi-state conference, and we are a multi-country conference with having a school in Canada in our conference. So there are all these different issues, and what was happening in Washington State may not have been to the same intensity and degree that was happening in in Oregon. And so trying to balance all of that We made a decision that once we concluded or brought the tournament to an end on that Thursday after, I think, 3 games, man, I was on the phone. I think it ended up being about 212 phone calls, either somebody calling me or me calling somebody about trying to reschedule it for next week.
Wow.
And to give the kids the opportunity, only to have it canceled two games into that reset up. And so I think in terms of what we would like our ADs and schools to know is that, you know what, there are a lot of decisions, but we're not going to be rash. We understand there's so many layers and complexities to any decision that we make based on all of this: kids' eligibility, their letters of intent, their athletic grant and aid, their academic plans. And so I think what we've tried to do is be very timely. I probably send something out once a day, maybe once every other day. And Sean, even when that message goes out, we sent something out last Friday about our next steps, and 2 hours later, the governor in Washington comes out with an even more strict mandate. So it's really about being flexible, but being timely and getting people to understand that at the bottom line, we're trying to do what's in the best interest of the safety of our students and our coaches and the athletic administration who supports these programs.
That's great. Well, I think that's I'm sure that's not lost on anybody. Like both of you have just said, it's a balance right now. This balancing act is difficult, but it sounds like based upon what you guys just shared, you're both taking a great approach, and I think a lot of coaches can learn from that. A lot of athletic directors can learn from that type of understanding of the situation and the best way to approach it. One of the things I was going to ask you, and Jim or Marco, whoever wants to go first here, doesn't matter. That third question: how does a situation like this affect the entire athletic department? But how does it affect the conference? I mean, Marco, you're the NWAC being 36 2-year junior colleges there in the state of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and obviously the school you mentioned in Canada as well. How does this affect not necessarily the athletic directors and the coaches, but how about the athletic department in terms of we've already seen the NJCAA come out and talk about eligibility. How is this going to affect recruiting from a scholarship standpoint? Do you have anything by way of updates or kind of what you guys were thinking about how that might affect the athletic landscape heading into next year?
We are going to give back a year to those freshmen and sophomores who were participating in spring sports. And we've done that. Now, Sean, we're looking at what are all those layers that have to supplement that decision and how it affects student athletes. So this morning, we're working on language as it reflects eligibility as a freshman, as a sophomore. What are some of those things that we're going to be willing to waive that maybe in previous years we wouldn't waive because of this situation? Sure. So we have that, and we're giving the decision to the institutions to handle how they want to deal with any type of recruiting that they want to do. Most institutions up here in the Pacific Northwest have shut down. There's no face-to-face contact with people, but we've left that decision up to the institutions. And but going forward, yes, it's almost like you're peeling the onion, and you're just finding more and more things that come about.
Yeah. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, similar. It's there's a lot of layers. You're trying to talk to your coaches and your student athletes about, okay, now here's an option, spring sport. We're going to give them the year back. But that means a lot to coaches. A lot of the sports were done recruiting. My softball team had pretty well wrapped up recruiting, and now all of a sudden, the coach has 5 or 6 returners that may come back that she wasn't accounting for.
Yeah.
So there's lots of moving parts as you go through this, and again, I think ultimately you talk to your coaches and try to keep the best interest of the student athlete in mind as you go through this. But it will be an ongoing process for the next 2 or 3 months, trying to figure out, who comes back, and eligibility wise, how many credits does that student athlete need to graduate? Do they need to come back? How does that look for scholarships, and talking to your administration on campus about possibly adding scholarship or tuition waivers to cover some of those kids coming back. And so, and then the other part of it is you're waiting on, the NCAA and some of the 4 years about what they're doing. And so, our kids, sophomores who may be graduating, trying to move on, even for winter sports, there's some unknowns there. And so just lots of moving parts. And so it's, when you have your conversations with your coaches and I'm assuming most athletic departments are getting a similar response. My coach has been great. They really understand the situation and they know it's unique, and there's no blueprint to get through this because it's unique and we've never done it. And so we are kind of making it up a little bit as we go, but trying to keep the best interest of student athlete in mind as we do it.
I'll tell you one thing that really,
Sean,
just based upon this conversation so far, is it sounds like the communication within the NWAC is really good. I know that's been a challenge, I think, for a number of the people that we've spoken with so far, is that the communication has been a challenge. And it sounds like, Marco, communication's been it has been at least consistent, regardless of whether it's decisions being made or not. At least there's consistency in communication. That's great.
Yeah, I think, Sean, that was one of the things we talked about from our office, is that we want to try to keep people informed, but informed with the right message, that we're not having to change it 3 or 4 times after we release the message. Now, there are going to be those situations where, yes, like when the governor comes out with his declaration, both governors in Oregon and Washington, yes, we have to adapt and change. But for the most part, we're just trying to keep something out in front of people, because it's always the unknown that I think causes the greatest consternation amongst people.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, and I was going to say, Marco, to follow up from what Jim had mentioned in terms of the domino effect with the NCAA, have you been having conversations with them at all, or how's that gone? Yeah,
we on Friday of last week, I called our contact, Greg Dana. He's the 2-year college relations specialist with the NCAA, and said, "Hey, Greg, here's what's going on. Any updates?" And so he said, "Marco, we're working through all this stuff right now. Division I has stated that they are interested in giving back a year to their people. Division II, same thing. Division III, and now NAIA. But those things have been said, but the details and how that might affect transfer students has yet to be worked out." And so, Jim mentioned it earlier, where it's a domino effect, and we're waiting for them to send us what they decide so that we can better inform our student athletes. And so what we've tried to tell our student athletes and coaches, our year of eligibility is specific to the NWAC, and please keep that in mind. But yeah, we're just waiting for the big trains above us to filter down this way.
Yeah, got it. Well, good. Well, it sounds like sounds like everything's headed in the direction, at least, where you'll be able to get some more information. So that's great to hear. I know the NCAA, they definitely have they've got their hands full right now. That's for sure. Hey, I think we can use that as a segue to our last question here for both of you guys. Again, appreciate it, Jim and Marco, both appreciate you guys taking time here today. Hopefully, this will be a good resource, like we mentioned, for all the athletic directors that are out there and coaches, just to see how we're handling it, and in an effort to really be a resource for them. What would you recommend in terms of being able to focus on what they can control for the remainder of this year, and how to prepare best for 2021 academic year based upon everything that you guys have experienced at this point?
Wow. It's hard to look too far ahead. I really think, athletic directors, coaches, student athletes are really just trying to figure out how to navigate spring term. Yeah. We are definitely going to be online education for at least the first 4 to 5 weeks of spring quarter, if not the entire time. And so we're just trying to figure out how to keep our student athletes engaged, enrolled. It's tough. It's, spring sports canceled. Some of the reaction is, I'm going to move back home, and understandably. And so we're just trying to set that up. We're working to keep our sport-related PE classes intact for spring at Clackamas, and so we've set up online Moodle shells and learning shells for our student athletes with their coaches, and so just to be able to assign workouts, communicate, where we can't physically meet face to face, but to have a spot where we can still have interactions with our returning and ongoing. I mean, we have so many decisions. We've got sophomores who are looking to move on. The big recruiting season right now, as far as that portion of it, and so I really think it's going to be a week at a time. I don't know how. I mean, we still have to obviously plan for next year and work on schedules and that type of stuff, and April 1st for men's and women's basketball will be our start of our letter of intent signing period. And so all those things, have to navigate how to communicate with recruits without actually being on campus, and so there's just lots of things, and so it literally is going to be a day-to-day, week by week, try to keep our heads down and not. I think if you look too far ahead, it's going to be overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice there, for sure. Jim, is there anything specifically that you and your coaches are doing with regards to how to navigate that communication process with recruits? Obviously, you talked about that next window that's coming up here April 1st. Anything that you guys are doing that you feel like might be worthwhile sharing with the rest?
We have, I know some coaches, and we're going to try to share the resource a little bit. So we've done some video tours of campus in the past. We've done at least in women's basketball, and I'm sure the other coaches have done it as well. We've done campus tours via FaceTime before, and different ways to get people here without physically being here. And just, we're going to have to be flexible and creative, and it goes on both ways. The high schools are doing the same thing, and so a lot of the student athletes aren't focused on what they're doing next year. A lot of the seniors trying to figure out how to graduate high school and get their core classes in. So sure. It's definitely going to be a challenge. I just, day at a time, and try to be creative and flexible and communicate. I think that's the key.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, one day at a time. Be creative, be flexible, and communicate. I love it. I'm gonna have these down here as my notes. That's great. Marco, how about yourself?
I think, Sean, at a conference level, we kind of look at short-term and long-term. On the short and across that is, let's try to keep things as simple as we can. And that is, control what you can control. Don't worry about what you can't control. A couple things that we've talked about is our coaches and our athletic administrators use this time to meet with student athletes to go over their academic plan. That's got to be the priority, I think, for our student athletes. Is the academics has got to be the priority. And so just was on a call before I got on this one with you guys about, our athletes really need to take advantage of the opportunity that they're going to get this year back academically. And so, but meet with them so they know right now where they stand academically, how close they're to a AA degree, how close they are maybe to transferring. I think that's imperative that they understand that. And I think long-term, Sean, I will tell you, we're not thinking that this is over, and this is probably going to affect fall sports in some way. And so to be blind to that, I don't think is good planning. And so we're starting to have those discussions in preparation of what may transpire in the fall.
Got it. Yeah, it's I think we're all in probably the same line of thinking to know that, yeah, it's definitely not going to be another couple weeks before everything goes back to normal. This is definitely going to have some lingering effects. And well, I'll say this: I'm encouraged to know that there's people like yourself out there, Jim. It's great to know that I was a former 2-year college student athlete and a coach, and to have people like yourself that are leading an athletic department and the student athletes. It gives us a lot of encouragement that, hey, we got the right people in the right places to lead people through this these uncharted waters. And Marco, continued good luck and Godspeed with everything that you're having to endure in leading the entire association. We appreciate you allowing us to interview you guys and get this information out there. We're going to try and share it with everybody. If it can be of a resource to people within the NWAC, if it can be a resource to people outside of it, we really appreciate you guys bringing it on or coming on today and sharing that. If there's anything else that you guys have that you'd like to, maybe some parting words or anything else you'd like to share, feel free to chime in now.
Sean, just appreciate the opportunity and what you guys are doing to try to provide solutions or suggestions to people, because that's really what it is. It's uncharted waters, but we're all got to work together and can learn from each other. And so just appreciate the format that you put forward on this.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's our pleasure. And we're just going to try to lead with positivity and poise right now. And that's all we can do. We're going to put people first. There's a lot of student athletes and coaches and people in athletics in that world that they're really challenged right now. So if we can be part of the solution, we want to do that. So, well, Jim, thank you very much. Continued success.
Absolutely.
As well. And Marco, we'll look forward to being in touch with you guys here in the future.
All right. Thanks, Sean.
All right, guys. Have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Too.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.